China Global Television Network.
In what used to be an endless expanse of moving sand dunes, agriculture and ecotourism have become an important part of the local economy. By combining ancient local knowledge and modern technology, Chinese companies are building new business models based on restoring damaged environments and fighting desertification. Having accumulated decades of experience, they're now ready to bring their business to the international market.
Welcome to New Money. I am Tracy Chang. Please remember to follow us on Weibo, Facebook, and Twitter, and please share all your thoughts on social media platforms. Without further ado, let me introduce to you our studio guest for today's show. Mr. Gao Xing is joining me today. He is the head of global sales at Zhongtai Securities. Now, China is facing a daunting task in desert prevention and control, but some companies are doing their parts to curb desertification. Among them, Allianz is carrying out land restoration experiment in Kikuchi Desert. How exactly is it doing to turn sand into treasure? Let's take a look.
These images are from the Kikuchi Desert in Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. At 18,600 square kilometers, this is the seventh biggest desert in China and used to be one of the major sources of the sandstorms that occasionally envelop Beijing. Okrunhua has been a herder in this area her whole life.
Before, all of our food and water were brought in on camels or horses. There were strong winds all the time. When I was young, I really hated my hometown. It was always windy. As soon as we built a road, the sand would cover it, especially near Muminyu village. We used to have an afforesting cooperative, and then Elian came to help us plant trees. Since then, the desert has retreated.
Nowadays, Elion Resources Group is one of the most successful desert reclamation companies in China. But 3 decades ago, it was a salt plant teetering on the verge of bankruptcy. Although the plant was located only 60 kilometers from the local railway station, the constantly moving sand dunes made the shortest route all but impassable. Salt trucks had to take a 300-kilometer detour to avoid the desert and often got stuck, which chipped away at the plant's profits. When 29-year-old Wang Wenbiao took over as director in 1988, his Jeep got stuck in a sand dune just 100 meters from his new office on his first day at work. He realized that something had to be done and came up with an ambitious plan to use a belt of vegetation to protect a new road through the desert.
You could say that the new road helped us understand the desert in a new way. We realized that we could create a green economy and do some really great things in the desert. What were those great things? At the outset, we began planting licorice, which is used in Chinese medicine. We chose licorice because it could be found naturally in the desert, which proved that it was possible to grow it here. Now that we have many years of experience, we know that licorice is capable of withstanding drought, that it doesn't require a lot of water or irrigation, and that it has a very good greening effect. Second, licorice is used in medicine, so it can be harvested and sold. More importantly, we pioneered a way to make it grow horizontally rather than vertically, which increased its greening effect from 0.1 square meters per plant to more than 1 square meter. That had a great effect on its ability to hinder desertification. Licorice also binds nitrogen. By binding large amounts of nitrogen from the air, it feeds its root nodule bacteria, which slowly turn the sand into soil. I think that this model is very, very interesting.
The licorice and other plants not only protected the new road and saved the salt plant, they also became an opportunity to create a local economy out of, if not thin air, then fine sand. But to scale up the greening of the desert, and thus the licorice production, Elion would need help from the local population. Ao Baoping, the company's director of desert ecology, explains how they got the locals on board with their plan.
We began promoting it on a large scale early on, but when we looked at the licorice industry in the area, we saw that production was falling, especially in Kikuchi, where desertification was a major issue. Even the wild licorice was disappearing. To improve the situation, we had to find ways to improve planting and growing techniques. After many years of research, we've developed very advanced licorice planting techniques that are well suited for planting in the desert. To promote the project to the farmers, we found ways to integrate the techniques with the lifestyles and demands of local people. We provide the farmers with three main advantages. We provide seedlings, know-how, and a buyback guarantee, so the farmers don't have to worry about their income, because we buy everything they produce.
Elion has also developed more than 100 technologies and catalogued more than 1,000 drought and salinity-resistant plant species for use in anti-desertification work. Ecotourism is also on the rise, and the desert has become home to the Belt and Road Desert Green Economy Innovation Center. Anshu Feng, the director of the Inner Mongolia Association for Control and Prevention of Desertification, shares his views on Elion's work.
They began by planting a belt of plants to protect the road. Then, they slowly developed methods for breeding and planting shelter belts that could prevent desertification and restore deserts. Now, they've developed from just desertification control to very high efficiency environment management and have an increasingly large industrial chain. They've brought their methods not just to other areas of China, but even abroad, where they've received international recognition. They've also received recognition and rewards from the relevant departments inside of China.
So needless to say that we all know that China's environment is facing some challenges, but tell us, how serious is the desertification problem in China, be it in large desert areas and also arable land erosion and so-called frequent sandstorms and extreme weather that we're experiencing right now?
Yes, well, we all know that China is a very big country, but do you know that already 30% of our land is desert? For any country, if 30% of your land is desert, that means 30% less of available land for people to live. And then not need to say that this desert brings a lot of sandstorms and various climates problems to our lives. And then those sandstorms are blowing as south even to Shanghai or even further places. I think that's causing a big problem to our lives.
That's absolutely a big problem. We have quite a few techniques to combat these problems. For example, we have something called thanks fixation, water saving, irrigation, and also greenhouse planning. But it's very difficult to find a third party, sort of like a credible institution to evaluate how these plans are working out right now, correct?
Well, that's true. Well, we all know that every year we have a day called the Tree Planting Day in China. And each year on that day, most of the Chinese, students or employees in companies will go out and plant trees. And we have been doing that for like decades, but then it didn't change much.
Where are these trees? We're still getting more sandlands every day.
Exactly. We have all those different measures, but then we just do it every year, repeating it again and again without taking care of it after those events.
That's right. But solar energy, when it comes to solar energy development, I think China is at the forefront in terms of how it's developing and how much solar energy panels that we're producing. And we should encourage setting up solar energy farms, ecotourism, or planting medical herbs in desert areas, correct? And how easy would it for us to actually do that in a deserted area?
I think, well, for solar energy, I think that's definitely something we should do and we can do very well. We're already the largest producer of solar energy related products, and we're actually forefront in terms of technologies globally. And then I think we have been doing that already. It's definitely helping those communities living in those deserts areas and maybe nearby areas to gain free and green energy and trying to save those trees as well. Well, it's definitely helping, but then I think we should do more because solar energy itself will not stop desertification because trees is one part, and then we also need to plant something other than just trees, all these kind of grasses, and maybe some maybe have more water from other areas as well. It's a very complicated issue. It cannot be solved by only one measure.
That's right. But how can these methods to help create jobs and making local residents live better and to generate more income for them? Because in past times, in a desert area, they overdevelop the very few arable land, therefore making the desert situation even worse, exacerbating the whole situation.
As we see in a lot of those desert areas, the place is already not livable for people to live there.
Right.
But again, the local companies and governments are still developing large apartment complexes, and a lot of the construction, like for building, is being built there. But then actually nobody wanted to live there to enjoy live in those apartments or those facilities, and so that actually is not helping to stop those desertification. Actually, this should be to help them to actually, if people still want to live there and still want to have a job, it's not, the job should not be building those buildings. Actually, the job should be stop the desertification. And those things actually creating jobs for those people to do, and by planting all these kind of trees and plants, and by having those environmental friendly facilities there.
Absolutely, that's generating more concrete results. All right, time for a short break, and after that we'll find out another company that helps arable land restoration. Is very successful in curbing desert and restore its ecosystem. How did they do it? Let's take a look.
For centuries, the Huttala grasslands near Hohhot in Inner Mongolia were a lush and productive natural pasture. But by the turn of the century, pollution and desertification had left the land nearly barren. The damage was only undone when a company called M-Grass began a restoration project here in 2012, as Professor Yun Jin-Feng of Inner Mongolia Agricultural University explains.
M-Grass's core technology is the selection and careful matching of plants, especially the use and scientific management of local plants. In just 3 years, they created a natural grassland.
The main business of M-Grass is, maybe not surprisingly, grass. The company has specialized in using this resilient plant to restore ecosystems ravaged by natural or man-made events. Gao Zhonggan, the company's chief ecological officer, describes the company's development over the last 20 years.
At the very beginning, we were a lot like other landscaping companies and were focused on landscaping in urban areas. After about 5 years of trial and error, we realized that if you use grasses or trees that aren't adapted to that specific environment, they won't thrive, and they'll just shrivel away. Using this experience, we developed these principles and methods into a plan for localized planting in the cities. We made sure to use local plants that already exist in the area, to restore the local ecology. Once you've grasped this principle, you have to actively analyze the changes in weather, water, and soil, and restore each area with plants that are adapted to those specific conditions.
This learning by doing approach has been successful in large part because of M-Grass's strict focus on systems, data, and standards. As Gao Zhonggan explains, their focus on finding local plants adapted to local climates is key to restoring each area.
What we do different is, for one, we create an ecological package which contains a diverse group of plants. We never rely on just one species. Instead, we focus on diversity, because we have to create a diverse environment for the plants to live in, where they can help and compete with each other. Second, you have to have a very good understanding of the plant species that you use. For instance, in our work in Hulanbur, where we restored moderately and lightly damaged grasslands, we spent 2 years to restore around 0.5 million acres into organic grasslands. That's probably the biggest recognized project in China.
Both Elion and Mgrass are local companies with deep roots in the very areas they are working to restore. Xu Feng tells us more about how Mgrass has utilized local resources and coupled them with technological innovation.
Mgrass employs a theory that is based on local knowledge and on modeling approaches based on a natural environment. What's more, they also use local people and specialists, because locals know the area and its history. For the plants too, they always use local species. Wherever they work, they pick plants from that area. So that's their three locals: local knowledge, local people, and local plant species. The methods they use are both suited to the local natural environment and adapted to the local geography and climate. That's why they've been able to expand from Inner Mongolia to the rest of China and the world.
So first of all, tell us about the business model of Mongolian grass. How does it work?
I think, as I said, now they start to try to plant some other plants other than just trees. And those grass, I think they are more efficient in terms of stop the land from desertification. And then by planting those grass, and they're trying to build a lot more environment-friendly, people-friendly land, then they can develop all different kind of business there. Also, this will benefit the local society, the local people, so the government will also try to subsidize them in terms of this business.
It's very difficult to rely on private investment because this type of situation, this type of businesses probably require a much longer profitable cycle for the company to be actually viable. But why should we still encourage private companies to participate in desert control?
Well, I think, if only rely on the public agencies, the government to do this, I think first you will need a huge injection of capital from the government, maybe, but then the government's capital from the tax, maybe they do not have enough capital to do that. But if private companies, by having the help from the government, they can actually borrow money from the banks. And with the banks' help, they can start to do some business as big as this. But then, as you said, it's difficult for them to benefit immediately. And private companies have because there is a profit, there is interest from the private sectors. So this is actually a perfect model for private companies and government to help each other.
That's right. But let's talk about this. When we look at Mengtao Shengtai, right, and companies like this company, are they well received in capital markets? I would assume that just like private companies' willingness to get involved with companies like this, private capital probably is very careful in terms of investing in a company like this as well.
Yes. So usually when investors, when they look at these companies, the most important factor they look at is how much subsidized can they get from the government and how long is the subsidy terms? Is it fixed? How much you can get each year and for maybe how many years? And if there is an uncertainty with that subsidizing policy, it's very difficult for investors to give a high valuation to these companies. But once those terms with the government and with the banks are fixed and stable for a longer period of time, then the valuation can be quite good.
Well, thank you very much. We are taking another short break, and after that, we'll find out how these successful models of desert control in China benefit other parts of the world. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's find out how China's desert control models are contributing to other parts of the world.
Human-caused environmental degradation is a problem facing countries around the world, and especially rapidly developing economies in Asia. However, damaged areas can provide big opportunities. In China, desert prevention and control has long been a national strategy, and successful projects benefit everyone from Beijing residents, who see a decrease in sandstorms, to locals, who see increased incomes and a more secure livelihood.
自治区这个有
Inner Mongolia now has over 21 million acres of artificial bushland, as well as over 16 million acres of natural bushland. These woody plants are a potential source of massive wealth. So our next task is to figure out how we can use our successes in environmental restoration to create new industries for the future. This is something we've been working on for a while already to create a sustainable development.
The methods used in China have attracted international attention. Eric Solheim, the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, has said that instead of looking at desertification as a problem, China has viewed it as an opportunity for economic development and poverty alleviation. Indeed, a UNEP report titled Review of the Kikuchi Ecological Restoration Project estimated that the restoration of the Kikuchi Desert would generate economic benefits worth $1.8 billion. When Biao of MGrass explains that although the benefits of restoration projects do not materialize overnight, once they do, they're considerable.
From the 80s and up until 2012, almost all the money we spent on desertification control and ecological industries was taken from the profits from our main business. Only in 2013 were we able to achieve a situation where the economic benefit was greater than the ecological benefit. That is, we managed to balance investment and production. Now, for instance, we receive 200,000 to 300,000 high-end tourists every year. Our ecological solar power plants are also doing great by combining greening, breeding, and power generation, as well as poverty alleviation. So, from 2013 on, we entered a period of virtuous development that is showing a lot of potential for the future.
At Elion, local experiences and methods are being exported abroad. MGrass has established 13 research centres that collect data on drought-resistant, cold-resistant and other types of hardy plants. The company's big data platform, which has accumulated data for nearly 2 decades, has become a goldmine for new desertification control and restoration projects, and is used by local farmers to decide what crops to plant in different regions and seasons.
We've already participated in grass species research projects in Mongolia. Further away, we've already been in Dubai for 3 years, where we've established a desertification research centre to study the local species there. We've also established a branch in Singapore, which among other things study and adopt cooperation systems used to study ecology and microorganisms.
So Gaoxing, we know that we didn't just wake up one morning and decide that we need to pay more attention to our environment. China has been doing curbing deserts and trying to do desert control for decades. Are we seeing any results?
I think the pace of desertification is definitely slower than before, and there we see, especially during the past decade, like the past 10 years, I think we are seeing more effect from our efforts. And also, I think of the past few years, we can see that sandstorms are actually less frequent than we have seen, 5, maybe 6 years ago. So actually, definitely, we're seeing the effect.
We're seeing some benefits here. But let's talk about that Sai Han Ba example. That was very unique. And right now, the government is promoting so-called 绿水青山金山是金山银山. In English, it means actually clean water and green mountains are as valuable as gold and silver mountains, which I totally agree. I wish that they could promote this idea earlier. So with this idea in mind, that's sort of encouraging a lot of capital, a lot of human efforts to put into keeping our green land and clean water. So do we expect situations like Sai Han Ba to happen elsewhere, to other deserts?
I think definitely there will. There should be. And then, as we know that a lot of Chinese people are going abroad now to go to other countries. And why are we actually going to other countries? Go to Europe, Australia, maybe go to Canada. What are we trying to see there? Mm-hmm. We're trying to see the nature. How beautiful the nature can be without human being destroying them. And then when we come back, we always say, oh, we should have that in our own country as well. And then that's why I think people are starting to realize how important and how economically we can benefit from the beauty of nature. So definitely we will see more and more companies trying to do this, especially with the help of government, and then try to benefit from it as well.
So other than these companies we talked about today, a lot of very well-known companies are trying to get into the initiative as well. We know that Alipay will actually plant a tree in your name if you meet their low carbon emission initiative and meet their targets as well. So far, apparently I have some stats here, it has planted over 10 million trees in a desert area. Let's not talk about how many trees actually become alive out of the 10 million they planted, but do you think it is a good way to enhance sort of awareness of desert control? Because I bet a large chunk of the population does not know that we have 30% of our lands purely desert.
Well, I think that definitely will help. Because we see those numbers every year, or something in the tree planting day, or maybe in school. But once you're out of school, you're working. We're just busy, living our own lives, trying to make more money, trying to realize our own goals and dreams. But sometimes we just forget about we're people living on the earth, living in a natural environment. And Alibaba and this company similar, they actually, as big corporations, their social responsibility is also important. And social responsibility is actually very hard and key word in today's business world. And a lot of investors actually are picking stocks in terms of how well they're doing in terms of social responsibility. And Alibaba, as one of the largest internet companies in China, and also one of the largest business in China, definitely they won't be left out. I think other companies, they are making a good example, and other companies will follow up as well.
Absolutely. When we talk about how much it really is tough for us because we have 30% of our lands being desert, there are actually a lot of countries have it tougher than we do. A lot of Middle Eastern countries are facing much tougher situation when it comes to sand erosion of their lands, and they have much more desert than we do. Maybe we can learn from these countries. For example, Israel is doing very well. What can we learn from a country like Israel?
I think first is technology. Well, because they are facing a much tougher situation than us, they have been developing very good technologies in terms of making clean water, maybe from the seawater, or actually planting trees and make them live in those desert areas. So those technology we can learn from. And I think because I think Israeli people, they are also very
innovative, right?
Innovative, and they care about the world's environment. I think definitely there is a room for us to cooperate with them, and we can actually help their companies with these technologies to come to China and help us as well, and they can also benefit from these things as well. And also, I think the way of their lives, how they are trying to save water, how they are trying. We should learn from them, because in China the cost of water is actually very low compared to other countries. We tend to spend use more water than we should, and then that can also be learned to change our living habits.
That's right. Recycle and save water.
Yes.
And speaking of Israel, is such an amazing country, such a small country with such a tough history, but you know what? It's the most innovative country on earth. A lot for us to learn. Thank you so much for being here today, Gashi.
Thank you for having me.
All right, don't forget to follow us on Weibo, Facebook, and Twitter. And thank you so much for watching this episode of New Money. We'll see you at the same time next week. Bye for now.